Yes, that's it. Welcome, Pastors John and Anne. We are so blessed to have you here as we celebrate 40 years of our church this year. Currently called Beyond Church. It's had a few names over the 40 years. We're just so excited to chat with you guys today because you are the founding, planting pastors of this church, and we would love for the church community of today and the future to hear the story of how the church came to be planted and your role in it, how you felt. Tell us the story.
Okay, wow. Well, the story starts in 1986, obviously 40 years ago. And it started through a connection with Hamilton Assemblies of God. That's what it was called back then, or Family Life Centre. And pastored by Paul Wolfenden, who had a real vision of seeing churches planted up and down the Hunter Valley. And so churches got planted in Maitland, in Singleton, in Muswellbrook. And there were a bunch of families that contacted Hamilton from Kurri Kurri. Anne and I just finished up on the North Coast, and Paul approached us and said, look, we'd love you to come to Kurri Kurri and plant a church. And my first response is, nah, not going to do Kurri Kurri. We're going to Sydney. We're going to plant churches in Sydney. And in June of 1986, we weren't able to have any breakthroughs in Sydney. And Paul asked us again, John and Anne, why don't you think about planting a church in Kurri Kurri? And I said, yes, straight away. We're going to do it. And so we moved to Kurri Kurri. But right from the onset, I had a vision for Cessnock. And so, look, why don't we plant a church in Cessnock? No, we want to do one in Kurri. Okay, we'll do one in Kurri, but I'll plant another one in Cessnock. And so on the 19th of October, 1986, we had our first Sunday meeting at Cessnock. I think it was at the band hall. It was a really bad hall.
Where was the band hall?
I think it's been demolished. It should have been demolished back then. And so we started there. And now we had maybe 30 people from Kurri that helped us. And before you knew it, we had families coming from Cessnock to help us plant the church. And one of the key families was Barry and Arlene Armstrong. Yes. And that's how the church launched. It launched in evangelism. It launched with church planting mindset. It launched with connect groups. It launched with God bringers. It launched with miracles. It launched with that spirit. Yeah. Amazing. That's how the church started.
It's amazing. I do feel like that when a church is planted, that the spirit that is in the church when it's planted, like the DNA of someone when they're born is with them for life.
Yeah.
And, I think that when we touch on those things in our experience, they seem to be the things that have life on them. So, where you can be working really hard at other things, but as soon as you start, you touch on that evangelism thing, or you touch on that, the miracles thing, or you touch on the life groups thing, it just sort of almost runs on its own. It just comes to life as though, this is like what the church has been born for.
I'm curious what it was like for you, Anne. So you were telling me before you had 2 little boys already when you moved out to Kurri.
Yeah.
So you moved the whole family and you're part of planting a church. 3 months later, you're planting another church. Talk to us about what it was like for you.
I think what I really knew and noticed here was the love of community. And so because they were country women with the hospitality that goes with the country, they just surrounded me as well. And so I remember the connect groups, they would come with cooking for me, and just that love really undergirded what I was doing. So I still did the kids ministry, I did women's ministry, but it was
And
it was
played the
okay.
piano.
And I played the piano all the way through
And
it.
Is this-
with one
Is
one
this
leg.
outside the belly?
Yeah,
The one
that's-
child on one leg and
sort
one
of
on the other.
You know, you two, you really grew up in this church, especially you, Luke. Tell us about some of your fondest memories growing up in the church, and then you came in as a teenager. What can you remember?
Well, I grew up without a father, so a single mum, only child. And mum was really determined to be in church for herself and for me. Used to travel from Cessnock to Newcastle and visit Glendale Christian Life Centre, it was called at the time, Pastor John Ollis. So somehow she heard that there'd be a church here, Pentecostal church in Curry, Cessnock. And so we started to come to this church. I think I would have been about 8 years old. Because I didn't really have a father figure, I think a lot of the guys, looking back now that I am older, looking back, I think that they would have been aware of that and they would have been doing what they could to support my mother and myself in this, family church. And so I've got a lot of memories of guys, men, just encouraging me, speaking life into me, taking me under their wing. I remember one time one of the guys in church said, let's go and grab a milkshake at Macca's. And I would have maybe been 13 or 14 years old. And so we went and had a milkshake and he had a gift for me. He had a book and it was a book called something like The Prophetic Gift or something, Rick Joyner or something like that. And I mean, the fact that I even remember that is just so unusual. And he just said that he saw in me a prophetic gift. And he wanted to encourage it, in me. And
Beautiful.
I kept that book for years. It wasn't so much the book, but it was just that someone saw something in me, someone invested in me, took the time to consider me. And when we were married, as a young couple, serving in the local church, families taking us under their wing, young and married, feeding us, having us over for dinner and giving us jobs. And the church really has been a significant formative part of my life, not just ministry life, but life in all areas. What would a good father do? What would a good friend do? So all of those things have come from, church life. And even despite the church not even necessarily being healthy 100% of the time, there's obviously just something there, isn't there, in the life of the local church that just builds people's lives. It's played a huge significant part in my life.
And when we got married, we actually didn't intend to stay here.
Oh, no, not at all.
We were both full-time students in Newcastle, like right in the city. And it didn't make any sense for us to live out here. We thought we'd just, find somewhere to rent in Newcastle and find our own church as a married couple to start our new life together. And we really did just feel compelled to stay. It made no sense. We had this old bomb of a car that took leaded fuel. We were both like students. We could barely afford to put petrol in that car to drive into Newcastle every day. There's hardly any public transport out here. But we really did just feel compelled to stay and keep helping to build this church. And I found that quite challenging at the time. It was also a very different church culture than what I'd grown up with. And also, just living here, kind of being so far away from the coast, that felt like quite a sacrifice. Fast forward 26 years, we've been married 26 years, and all 4 of our children have been born into this church. They've all come to church the week after they were born. They've all been dedicated in this church. They've now all been baptised in this church. A year ago, our daughter was married in this church. And there's just nothing like getting to raise your family in the one church.
That's amazing. What year was it that you took on the senior pastorship of the church?
2013.
2013.
So we've just
2013.
marked 13 years as
13 years.
as the senior pastors. And the
So
funny
that'd be
thing,
the longest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before
Tenure.
that, I mean, the funny thing is we were talking about Pastor John Wolfenden before,
Yeah.
and he was a pastor of this church.
Yeah.
And so he came to support this church after the pastor before him left suddenly,
Yeah.
and there was nobody to pastor the church. And so he was he just resigned from his role as the state secretary for the New South Wales ACC state executive, which he had that role for over 20 years. You probably know.
Yeah.
And so he was on the beach, so the story goes, and God dropped Cessnock into his spirit. And he thought, what on earth do I need to know about Cessnock for? I'm not pastoring, I'm not on the state executive, I certainly don't need to be thinking about Cessnock today. And then it was only shortly after that he got a call. Actually, I think I might have emailed him. I said, hey, Pastor John, this is happening in our church, and I know you don't know me, but I'm just wondering what you think we should do. Anyway, so he, long story short, came as a interim or caretaker pastor and said, look, I'll come for a few months, 3 months, until you guys find a new senior pastor.
you had your PMC at the time.
Yeah.
So Luke wasn't an ordained minister. So we were like, what do we do when the pastor leaves? Luke's not a fully fledged
So he said, I'll
pastor
come
yet.
along, I'll be here till we find a pastor for you guys then.
Yeah. And then Delma came as well.
Pastor Delma, Pastor John, Delma's husband Bert, Sue,
Delma's
daughter, and a few other people he brought from Newcastle
Wonderful.
to help support the church through that tumultuous season,
Yeah.
one of the many tumultuous seasons that it had. Anyway, so he was coming for a few months. He ended up staying for 6 years and became the longest serving pastor the church had ever had
as an
as
interim.
an interim pastor.
I'm really grateful for the foundations that you did lay, because the church went through a lot of turmoil after you guys left. By the time we came into the senior role, the church was not yet 30 years old, and we were the 10th senior pastors.
Wow.
Wow.
So it wasn't a lot of time to establish anything. And, you know, we were very young. And really in the last few years, I think, is for me the first time I've realised how long it does take for those foundations to go down deep in terms of building culture into the church. So I'm actually really encouraged to hear about what you were actually trying to plant into the church in the DNA at the very beginning, because I feel like we're only now just starting to,
Definitely.
40 years later,
Wow.
come to a place of kind of health and flourishing and some of that longevity that you envisioned from the beginning.
Well, let me tell you the significance for 40 years. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
So 40 is a really interesting number in the Bible. Number one, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Number two, the children of Israel were in the wilderness for 40 years. Number three, Jesus went into the wilderness and was tempted from Satan for 40 days. So if you look at those three mentions of 40, what a lot of people don't realize is that 41 is the number of breakthrough. So it stopped raining
Yeah.
after 40 days and 40 nights, and the sun shone, and there was a whole new world that began. After 40 years in the wilderness, 41st year, they defeated the giants. They got their promised land. They went from the wilderness living to promised land willing. Then after Jesus was in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, he comes in the power of the Spirit and begins signs, wonders, miracles, and the propagation of the gospel. 41 is what you're coming into, and 41 is a significant breakthrough number in the Bible.
I mean, you had that revelation a few months ago, didn't you? Maybe, share the vision that you saw of the church.
It was a pretty clear vision. It was something that I saw at our national conference
That's right.
That
was last year.
And we're in worship, and God just showed me a picture of our church. And to be honest, it kind of looked and felt like some of what you're describing, like a bit of a like a pioneer spirit, like we're just getting started kind of a environment where there's a real hunger and appetite and expectation for God to do something new, outwork through, the power of signs and wonders and miracles. And it wasn't really led by a skilled, charismatic, A-type leader. In the picture, in the image, I just saw, myself on the platform facing our church, but just worshipping on my knees like everyone else. And every single person in the room was full from the front to the back, and not one person, wasn't hands raised or on their knees or engaged, in what God was doing in the room. And, that vision comes off the back of, or actually right in the middle of a really challenging season for us. God said that he was wanting to build a house of praise and a house of worship through our church. And it just really gave me a fresh sense of vision for the future of our church. Beautiful. And we had our own challenges personally and the church leading up to that period of time where we had to close our church in Scone. We also had a church in Toronto we had to close. We were running creative arts schools in all of our locations. We had to close all of those, including the one here in our home church in Cessnock. We had to say goodbye to some team members. Some who moved away some got married. Some moved away for work, and it just felt like a season of contraction. And we were personally a little bit discouraged. But yeah, I was just encouraged that the whole idea that this is the 40th year of this church being here in this place. And there's been many years where we personally would have probably loved to have not had been here anymore. It's like, oh God, sure, our season is over. Like, we've done what we've been called to do. We've been here for a few years. It's time to move on. But being here now, being able to kind of steward this church into its next 41st year, I'm pretty excited about it. And I do think, I want to just, confirm, I guess, what you're saying and your thoughts about that being the year of breakthrough. Yes. That's really what we feel for our church in the next years to come.
Yeah. Well, you're well placed, aren't you? Yeah. You're ready to launch into another new level.
Yeah.
So get ready for it. Yeah. We're actually seeing that because we've just done our 40th anniversary and we've gone to a new level.
Yeah, wow.
So we pray that for you as well, that you'll go to an amazing new level. Yeah. You're ready now. God can just take you to that next level.
This church was birthed out of the inspiration of another church that had a vision of church planting up and down the Hunter Valley. May that vision rest with this church, that you have that same vision over the next 10 years to plant churches up and down the Hunter Valley, and a valley church planting valley churches. There's just an absolutely awesome dream to pursue and to invest your future into.
And when God gives dreams and visions like that, he will provide the resources. He's the God that undertakes his vision.
Yeah.
So be excited. You're going to have a whole new lot of breakthrough.